breaking news here at the Scarlet Faithful. Pete Thamel reporting that Athan Kaliakmanis has been named the starting quarterback for Rutgers football, and Gavin Wimsatt has entered or is in the process of entering the transfer portal on May 1st, the deadline to do so. A lot to unpack here. Yesterday, Tuesday, David Anderson and I discussed the quarterback battle, talked about how Athan Kaliakmanis differentiated himself in the battle in terms of his ability to stretch the field and connect on some deep passes in the spring game. I thought in particular Gavin Wimsatt continued to struggle in the areas that he struggled in last year with his accuracy. David mentioned not connecting on the deep ball. He struggled with some short passes as well. And I think that it came down to the fact that, when Athan Kaliakmanis transferred in, he obviously had familiarity with Kirk Shiraka, who recruited him and coached him at Minnesota. And there was a certain understanding there in terms of his system, a familiarity, and also with Shiraka knowing what he was going to get with Kaliakmanis. I think that they evaluated Gavin over the last few months to see how much improvement he was able to make from last season, which really only ended 4 months ago. And again, I emphasized in the podcast yesterday, the spring game was just one game, one scrimmage, one practice, one time for all of us to see. But it more or less was pretty consistent with what I had heard in terms of how spring camp had gone. And I think it was pretty clear to everyone within the program, or at least the decision makers, being Shiano, Kirk Shiraka, possibly other staff, that Athan Kaliakmanis was the better quarterback and was going to put this team in a better position to succeed. David Anderson harped on his ability to see the middle of the field better and to make some passing decisions and be able to complete passes that I just thought his touch, his feel, he completed some deep balls to Nassim Brantley in the spring game, and he just looked the part. Now, that being said, he's not a perfect quarterback, and people might laugh at me for saying this, but I don't think he's the next coming of Gary Nova, right, where he's going to be third in the Big Ten in passing efficiency. But I think he's going to be an upgrade. I do think one thing I touched on yesterday was I thought Gavin was really good at the read option and setting up the run game from Nungai. So that's something we're not really going to know yet. But in terms of Kaliakmanis, I think he raises the floor for the offense. How much does he raise the ceiling? Remains to be seen, but I think the counter to that is that Gavin was not reaching the ceiling. I think that he had a higher ceiling long term, but the staff just hadn't seen enough growth and development to have confidence that he'd ever reach that potential ceiling. So Wimsatt's career is over at Rutgers. He enters the transfer portal, and Gavin's going to have opportunities. We'll see at the Power 4 level, probably more like the G5 level. I would think the MAC would be a conference that will have interest in him. So we'll see what happens with him. But what I also think this says is that the staff has a lot of confidence in Ajani Sheppard now as the backup quarterback. He looked really good in the spring game. I've heard he looked good in the spring. Staff's been pretty high on him. And I think also this speaks to the era of the transfer portal in that it's hard to hold on to younger talent. And if the staff really felt that, Ajani's entering his second year in the program, if they believe in him, they needed to show him something too, I think. And if you're thinking that Gavin is definitely behind Athan, and if you think Ajani is pretty close, potentially, if not better, then why wait? Why sabotage a year of eligibility for Gavin? And I think you have to give Greg Schiano a ton of credit here for making a decisive move. Because, and I one thing I really harped on in the podcast on Tuesday was the handling of the quarterback position being so critical and paramount, really, to the success of this team next year. And David touched on the concerns about having a quarterback controversy. Well, there's no controversy now, and clear roles are now defined. Athan Kaliakmanis is your starting quarterback. Ajani Sheppard is your clear number two. And now AJ Srace, incoming freshman, who had some bright spots on Saturday, certainly has a lot to grow, but he's the clear number three. And now, in terms of reps, in terms of flow of training camp, the off season, it's just a lot more manageable in terms of having three quarterbacks versus four. And to David's credit, I have to say, he really harped on the fact that he couldn't see all four quarterbacks coming back next season. He was 100% right. So there you have it. I think, again, Kaliakmanis has some things to work on in the offseason. I think some arm strength. But there's a lot of young receivers. We talked about certain roles they would have. And I think that this offense is going to be different, right? You're not going to have the running threat in Gavin that you have now in Athan. But I think you have a lot more athletic playmakers in the wide receiving group. And Chirac is going to be able to be a little more creative there. You obviously have Kyle Monangai, the Big Ten leading rusher, back. You have Sam Brown, healthy. I think he's going to be more of a weapon now. So the offense is going to look different. Certainly, I think the floor is being raised. How much better the offense will be better remains to be seen. But I think you have to give the coaching staff a lot of credit. This is certainly, perhaps it was an easy decision on the field in terms of paper, in terms of hedging your bets, in terms of contingency plans. It was a risky decision, right? Because you're down a depth piece. But if they were concerned in any way that, hey, maybe Ajani Sheppard's going to look to leave if Wimsatt stays, and they feel that good about Sheppard, which they obviously do, they would not, I think, deciding on Athan, yes, it's in part to how they feel about him versus Gavin, but I also think making the call now and giving the Gavin the opportunity to leave speaks volumes on how they feel about Ajani Sheppard. We know they love AJ Srace, obviously. So clarity is key, and it's the most important position in the program. And Rutgers has clearly defined roles now going into a hugely important 2024 season. You have a ton of starters back on both sides of the ball. I think you have more talent on the offensive side of the ball. You have a ton of veteran experience on the defensive side of the ball. Got to get healthy, got to stay healthy. But this team now has a real opportunity to hit the ground running. There's cohesion throughout June and July. You go into August, there's no question marks in terms of the key position at quarterback. It's Athan's program now. It's Athan's offense. He has that familiarity with Chirac, and that's huge. And he's going to get a ton of work in with the receivers this year, this offseason, Ajani and Srace as well. It just speeds up progress. It speeds up development. You have one less quarterback in the room that you have to get reps for. And, credit to Gavin for being stand-up this entire time and has been a class act throughout. And good for him to go see what else is out there and continue his career and hopefully have success somewhere else. So to see Shiano make the call at the deadline, I've already seen some comments. People are upset about it. You're never going to make a decision that everyone's going to agree with. But again, I think the confidence in what they have in that room now and the potential chemistry issues you would have by having Gavin stay if you clearly feel Athan is the guy. They did the right thing. They did the right thing. And hindsight's 2020. If Athan and Ajani go down next year, it's going to be very easy to say, oh, they made a mistake. They should have kept Gavin around. I don't think Shiraka wanted to entertain a dual quarterback system. And although Wimsatt is explosive on the ground, I think they wanted to move forward. And now they could build an offense around the personnel they have. And I think they're excited about the receiving group. You're strong at running back. There's some stability there at the offensive line. Tight end, I think they're happy with Fletcher and Higgins. So the offense is certainly going to enter the offseason now, the remaining offseason and training camp, with an understanding of what they are and what they can be. And I applaud Rutgers for being this decisive. Schiano, throughout his tenures at Rutgers, has struggled with that at times. And I think this shows that they understand the urgency involved with the 24 season. And they're not messing around. They're not going to be indecisive. And last year, there really wasn't a lot of decisions to make because Gavin was clearly your best option, I think. I know there's some Evan Simon fans and sympathizers out there, but I do think that Gavin was the right call last year. And they stuck with him. And they gave him a real opportunity to make the most of it. And unfortunately, he wasn't able to fulfill the potential they obviously saw in him from the beginning. Former 4-star top 100 recruit. But I think the way in which Schiano's handling this, the way he treated Wimsatt, the way he's treating him now, if they were ever concerned about mishandling a 4-star, I think he has shown here that in how he deals with recruits, how he deals with younger players, how he deals with top prospects, he did it the right way. I think you have to give him a ton of credit here. And that's only going to help recruiting in the future. And David and I touched about the coaching staff really hitting the ground running here with identifying talent and the way they're bringing talent into the program, the way they're developing talent. And it just unfortunately never happened with Gavin. And now you have a guy in Athan that raises the floor in the position. And they're really going to be able to build around here and focus on his growth and development in the offseason, as well as Sheppard and Cerise. So breaking news here on Wednesday, Pete Thamel breaking the news as he always does with Greg Schiano from his pro days at Tampa Bay. Gavin Wimsatt entering the portal, Athan Kaliakmanis, starting quarterback, moving forward. And again, Ajani Sheppard is the backup. I think that's the underrated part of this news here. They have a lot of confidence in him. And the Rutgers offense is going to move forward here. So a lot of exciting things to think about and talk about moving forward this offseason. Thanks so much for listening and watching another edition and another rapid reaction of the Scarlet Faithful podcast.